Shrill beeping pierced through drifting, filmy clouds. Mike opened his eyes and groaned. For a couple seconds, he had managed to clink the sensation of bouncing left over from his sleep. But the beeping continued, piercing and intense. Mike flung out his left hand and slapped it towards what he thought was the top of a cheap plastic digital arm clock that sat next to the battered metal desk lamp on his rickety nightstand. Instead of hitting the alarm, Mike's hand landed on the casket player near the lamp. He felt his fingers brush against the paperback book. Then he heard the book slip over the nightstand and hit the thin carpet on its hardwood floor with a soft thud. Mike pulled his hand back, his fingers in full-on early morning klutz mode, once again bumping something. This time it was the plastic bottle of Mike's pills. Mike heard the bottle tippity-tap down the side of the nightstand and land on the carpet with a scushing sound. He cringed, hoping he remembered to put the cap on tight. Mike started to sit up, but the motion sent what felt like a gagging shard of glass throughout his temporal lobe. Mike clutched at his head. The glass shard started moving around his skull. The alarm's continuous screeching beeps seemed to drive the shard even deeper in his head. Mike squinted towards the nightstand and once again attempted to turn off the alarm. This time, his palm hit its target. The infernal noise stopped. Mike groaned again and rubbed his templates, sighing. He swung his legs out the bed, and reached for the glass next to the cassette tape player. At least he managed to not knock over that. The glass was still full of water. Mike guzzled it and set the glass back down. Mike's bare feet shifted, and his right one encountered his pre-described pill bottles. Wincing as he bent over because the motion intensifies the headache, Mike picked up the dark amber plastic container. Thankfully, he had put the cap on the bottle. The little white prescribed pills, a couple dozen of them, were still safely inside. Mike stuffed the pill bottle under his mattress, just a few inches from the bed. Then he leaned over again, gritting his teeth against the increased jabbing of his head. He picked up his Dream Theory paperback. Setting the book next to the cassette player, Mike hit the rewind button on the machine. When the cassette tape started to whistle wire motion, Mike managed to calmly inhale. Finally, his morning routine was starting to fall into place. Usually, Mike's first motion after waking up were raw. Hit the alarm, hide the pills, rewind the tape. This morning, the unusual high pain level of his headache had turned Mike's routine into a one-stood show. The tape's smooth rewind settling him back into a sense of normalcy. Okay, Mike said. He stroked his head and down his hair. Standing, Mike took a couple steps away from his bed and planted his feet on the edge of his threadbare blue and gray rag rug. He stretched his arms overhead and willed himself to ignore his headache. Mike dropped to the floor and began doing push-ups. Not counting, Mike lowered and lifted himself over and over and over. Beneath Mike's palm, the carpet felt scratchy and dirty. Vaguely, he tried to remember when the last time he vacuumed his room. Lifting his head as he pumped his body up and down, Mike took a similar sprite of his space. The nearly empty room, it held only his narrow bed and a small nightstand, was nothing but a bare cell. A cell that kept Mike separated from the world. Even his one window, which might have reminded him of the reality existing beyond his own suffering, was covered by heavy blackout curtains. Dropping his head again, Mike continued to pound out his push-ups. The routine, through painfully, comforted him, as did his prison-like surroundings. A few more minutes of this punishment and he might be able to face his day. Abby bent over her drawing pad and concentrated on getting the image just right. Tucking her tongue between her teeth, she dragged her pencil across the page in a curved line. Pulling back, she frowned. Did that look all right? Not sure. Abby lifted her gaze. She looked out through the opening of the hidey tent that surrounded her. Constructed from blankets held in place by her white painted nightstand, her matching small desk, and one edge of her squat bunray, also white but not matching, Abby's tent snuggled up in her bed. A bed which she didn't like nearly as much as she liked the cozy confines of the hidey tent. With two fluffy pillows on its floor and another blanket scrunched up around the pillow, the inside of Abby's hidey tent was like a little nest that made Abby feel like a safe and cared for baby bird. The pillows and the blanket smelled like a degenerate in detergent that it was washed in. Abby had seen the detergent box. It was labeled rain-scented. Abby didn't think detergent smelled like rain, but it didn't smell bad. It was kind of sweet and fruity. That meant that the inside of Abby's tent was sweet and fruity too. Abby liked it in her hidey tent. She could handle almost anything that she was tucked inside of it. Take, for instance, the grunting coming from her brother's room. Mike was doing push-ups again, and Abby wished she didn't have to listen to him. He clearly didn't like doing them. Abby could tell from all the moans and groans. When Mike did a push-up, Abby felt bad, as if something hard was poking her in the belly. She didn't like feeling like that. Although inside Abby's hidey tent it was cool and dim, a fat ray of sun was sweeping past the tent's opening. The sun ray ran on the wall opposite of the tent. Many of Abby's complete drawings covered the wall. Abby used the drawings as nudges to help her draw better. Although most of the things in her drawings were stick figures, some of them were more real looking. Abby was getting better at drawing. That made her feel good. Not a lot made Abby feel good, forever and ever. Abby had felt like she didn't really know how to be. No one seemed to want her around much. Not her brother, not her babysitter, Max. Not the kids at school for the ones of the development center. Well, no one wasn't quite right. Dr. Lillian seemed to be like having Abby around. Dr. Lillian was the one who got Abby all the cool colored drawing pencils she used now. Dr. Lillian said Abby was talented beyond 10 years old. That meant Abby drew better than other kids her age. Drawing made Abby feel special, so did the things she drew. Drawing was Abby's way into the world that she liked being in. It was a world where she wanted. A sharp knock sounded on Abby's flimsy door wood. Abby put aside her drawing pad and pulled close the two sections of the blanket that formed the opening of her tent. She picked up Dolph, her plush dolphin, through the narrow cracks between the blankets. She looked toward the scared pale brown surface of her door. She wished her door was big and thick and had latches on it, kind of like a castle door. Abby, Mike called out from the other side of Abby's not castle door. Abby didn't answer her brother. Are you ready, Abs? My name's not Abs, Abby whispered. My name's Abby, and I'm not here. Abby's not thick and not locked door open. Mike snuck in his head into Abby's private space. He looked towards Abby's bed, that shifted his gaze to a crack in the blanket that Abby peered through. Abby clearly heard her brother's loud sigh. Abby stared at Mike's feet as they were heading towards her hidey tent. Her brothers wore a pair of black dress socks. They were faded and stretched out in the kind of crumple around his ankles, and both socks were full of holes. His left big toe stuck out of the largest of the rag openings. The sock-covered feet stopped really close on the front of Abby's hidey tent. The feet, or maybe it was Mike himself, smelled sweaty. Abby wrinkled her nose and put her face in Dolph's soft fur. Dolph wasn't as clean as the blankets in Abby's hidey tent to be, so he didn't smell sweet and fruity, but he didn't smell bad. He smelled kind of like Abby. And Abby smells like lemons because of her shampoo smelled like lemons. Abby, Mike said, I know you're awake. Abby squeezed her eyes shut. She heard whispering movements, and she felt the blankets flap her hidey tent separate. Mike let out another long line sigh. Abby! As Abby kept her eyes closed, Dolph pressed against her face. She didn't move. A scrape, a flutter sound. Abby felt an air whisk over her bare arms. She opened her eyes. Mike was shaking one of the chairs that held part her hidey tent in place. Okay, Abby yelled. Mike's head poked through the hidey tent flaps. His hair snuck all weird. She thought it looked stupid that way, but he might have done it on purpose. Some of the boys in school had their hairs like that. Abby thought about her own hair. It probably looked stupid at the moment, too. Her hair always went all over around the place when she slept, and it was thick and fine like her brother's, so it tangled easily. Abby glared at Mike. You're being a jerk, Abby said. Mike rolled his eyes. When Mike rolled his eyes, Abby sometimes felt like she was looking at her own eyes in someone else's head. Abby's and Mike's eyes were a lot alike, even though his were a lighter brown than hers. They call his hazel. Their eyes swooped down the outside edge like they were a little sad all the time. That made sense, actually. Besides their eyes and the black, thick, slightly wavy hair they both had, Abby didn't think she and Mike looked much alike. Mike's face was kind of hard, like his skin was stretched over metal or wood. Abby's face was softer and rounder. Mike jostled the hidey tent again. Come on, Abby, I have somewhere to be, or you know that. Abby mimicked Mike's sigh. It's not my fault you lost your job at the mall. Abby sighed a second time. She knew that getting ice cream from the dairy freeze was not something that was going to happen much anymore. If ever. Mike had gotten a discount from the food court when he worked there. No more discounts, no more ice cream. You're right about that, Mike said. Abby knew he was talking about the job, not the ice cream she was thinking of. But if I'm late, that will be your fault. Mike lightly clicked aside the blanket tent. 5 minutes, I want you dressed. Abby stuck her tongue out at Mike. He copied her. She thought their tongues might have looked alike, but his was bigger. Mike turned to leave the room. Abby looked at Dolph and raised an eyebrow at him. The dolphin seemed to go along with her idea, so she threw him through the opening of the hidey tent. Dolph arched through the air and plowed his butt nose into the middle of Mike's back. As Dolph dropped the yellow and green bedded rug that covered Abby's wooden door, Mike turned around. Abby looked at Mike's feet. Nice socks, she said. You're one to talk, Mike said. He turned and left her room. Abby crawled out of her tent and scooted forward to rescue Dolph. She scrambled upright and looked down at her own feet. She wore one red and white striped socks and one yellow polka dot sock. Abby shrugged and hugged Dolph's clothes. He didn't seem to care about her mismatched socks. Mike glanced at the gray clouds that hung so low that it felt like they were pressing him down with a crackled concrete walkway that led up the sad rectangular brick building, but he didn't want to go in. The building, whose simply downtrodden architects had an underfunded government office, looked like it could barely hold its own under the unbarristraded clouds. Mike hated straight clouds. They were always iron-like and depressing. And they were spineless. All show and no substance. Stratus clouds made the sky dark and threatening, but they actually held a very precipitation. Mike had learned that in science class, and for some reason remembered it. Maybe that was because he felt a little like the stratus cloud himself. Mike hesitated at the shallow steps leading into the building in front of him. How many times he had been in this miserable place, he lost count. Mike kicked loose a piece of crumbling concrete from one of the steps. He found a crunchy, satisfying sound. Squaring his shoulders, Mike slouched and steps and went to the building. The interior of the building that housed the city's social service office was even uglier than the exterior. With dirty cream walls and industrial-grade, faded brown carpet, the lobby and main hall weren't much more attractive than the sewer. Not that Mike would ever been in the sewer. This place was ghost enough. Shuffling forward, Mike plucked a number of his sacred black number disappeared near the counter at the far side of the lobby. He looked at the little piece of paper in his hand. Number 27. He looked up the daily lamp display on the wall. Number 11 flickered automatically under the fluorescent lights and cast a harsh glare over everything. Great, Mike muttered. Mike dragged his feet across the muddy carpet as he headed towards the line of molted plastic chairs along the left wall of the lobby. The other 26 people who held paper numbers, along with their spouse or children or friends, Mike had none of the above, crowded the relatively small area. However, an end chair was open. Mike headed towards it and took a seat. As soon as he sat, he used his butt to scoot the chair away from its neighbors. A middle-aged woman who sat in the adjusted chair was large, and her sweatpants and keys thighs encroached into Mike's space. Mike felt the woman's gaze on him as he reposed the chair. He heard her huff, but he didn't glance up. Looking to the eyes of other people wanting to see a social worker was never a good idea. You could get swallowed by a mirror of life-sucking depression if you made eye contact with the other people in this building. Everyone here was one crummy situation or another. Dealing with his own baggage was hard enough. Mike didn't want to get a glimpse of anyone else's. Even though Mike didn't see the other people in the room, he could sense them. Their presences were like spars of the cell. Mike could smell and hear the people around him, too. The waiting room was filled with sound, nervously shuffled feet, sniffles, coughs, throat clearing, a couple of weak sobs, and muttering voices. Even though Mike didn't want to hear about the other people's problems, some snippets of conversation got past his intention to mind his own business. So I say to him, one whining female voice relayed, I say, you can't just do that to another person. Where we're supposed to go when you throw us out? A deep male voice on the other side of the room boomed loudly enough to be heard outside the building. Man can put food on the table with a peanut they try to pay. Mike mentally plugged his ear and started his feet. Tuning on the surroundings, Mike disappeared in his favorite game. What would I be doing if I was? Mike liked to have played out all sorts of imaginary scenarios when he indulged in this game. Sometimes he was a reporter or a traveling photographer. Sometimes he was a scientist or a doctor or a judge. Most often, Mike was a contractor, the head honcho in charge of building big houses or interest office buildings, not buildings like this one. Never ever was Mike a security guard or a janitor or a mail clerk or an unemployed loser looking for whatever work he could find. Mike knew that playing this kind of make-believe game was something he would have outgrown years ago, but letting himself imagine a different life than the one he lived was what allowed him to get up in the morning and put one foot in front of the other. When Mike dropped into the bed, be pretending Mike instead of real life, he could work with a clean slate. He could stow all the baggage, all the disappointment, all the guilt. And if he couldn't put that away from time to time, the weight of it probably would have driven him all to a wall by now, or kill him. Mike wasn't sure which would have been worse. Number 27? Mike looked up. Already? A 40-something woman in the trim, permanent eyes that looked like they've been little more than an hour or two of sleep per night for years looked around the room. Mike lifted a hand and got her attention. The woman tugged on her hem in her wrinkled orange blouse. The blouse clashed, Mike thought, with the woman's rust-colored skirt. The skirt hung crooked on the woman's skinny hips. The skirt was 2 inches above the woman's right knee and an inch below the left. Number 27, the woman called out to Mike. Mike nodded. Follow me, the woman said. Mike stood.